All right, y'all. So something just dropped in my heart, and I want to share with y'all real quick. And the thought in my head is this: what's happiness? So I'm having a conversation in my head, and I'm gonna share this conversation with y'all. What's happiness? And 9 out of 10 times, a lot of people, your happiness 9 out of 10 times is dependent. It's contingent upon what's happening in your life at that moment. So if all the bills are paid, you got more money coming in than money going out, right? So your economics is, you have an economical surplus. You got money coming in and you have less money going out. So you're running a surplus, not a deficit. Your domestic life is happy, it's healthy. Your domestic life, the wife is being real, she's loyal, she's doing what she has to do. The children are behaving appropriately. They're getting good grades in school, and your business is booming. And yeah, I think all of us would agree that you'll be happy under those circumstances. You just got a clean bill of health from the doctor. I don't think there's anybody that's going to disagree that that's going to bring a level of happiness. But I don't think that's how but is that happiness though? Right? Is that really happiness? Or is that, you got favorable circumstances that make you feel good? I would define that not as happiness, but as favorable circumstances leading to happiness, maybe. Right? Favorable circumstances leading or causing a certain euphoric feeling within your mind. So you call that happiness. And for all intents and purposes, I could take that. I could live with that. If somebody told me that that's happiness, I wouldn't push back. I wouldn't argue and say they're wrong, because it's not a right or wrong answer. It's philosophy. It's something to philosophically think about. But I on the other hand, alternatively, I would say that happiness is having those same euphoric feelings, having those same internal joyful feelings, irregardless of those contingencies. So you're running a deficit instead of a surplus. You still have that same internal euphoria. How do you maintain that? Happiness is, your domestic life is not all healthy and balanced. The children are not, behaving appropriately and getting good grades in school. Your business is probably looking at chapter 11 or something, right? You're running a deficit, economical deficits. And you still are able to hold on to that, internal euphoria. You're still able to maintain that. So I would think that that's real happiness, being able to remain in a happy state. And it don't mean you walking around like an idiot, right? I'm not talking about you just a bubblehead. You walking around with a smile on your face 24/7. That's equally naive. That's naivete. But I'm talking about an internal peace, where you have an internal joy, an internal peace, an internal satisfaction, an internal contentment. You're content within yourself, irregardless of what's going on in your outer world. Because if you study what's called the 7 Hermetic principles, one of those principles is the law of rhythm. And the law of rhythm pretty much states you have ebbs and flows. Tides come in, tides go out. In short, life is filled with ups and downs. There's never, nothing ever stays completely balanced. The goal is to get it balanced, but it never stays balanced. Why? Because it's ebbs and flows. It's ups and downs. Right? It's cyclical. The law of rhythm, Hermetic principle. So I think happiness is being able to maintain the same euphoric feelings when the scales have tipped in an unfavorable light. Right? When the force is not with you, so to speak. And you still are able to build a mind frame on principles. Principles that keep you at peace within. And those principles are, one, your trust in God, right? That's a principle. God is an unwavering principle. What I mean by that is that no matter what comes your way, you know that God is going to work it out for you. You know that God's going to make all things work together in your favor, right? And that no matter how the outcome is, even if the outcome is not what you wanted, you still trust that God's will for your life is better than your will for your life. That God's will keep you sane, keep you sanity, keep your sanity, right? That trust in God. Now, I can hear pushbacks. I can hear the other side arguing that what I'm saying might be nonsensical, might be crazy, cuckoo, whatever, right? But what I will say is this to the other side, to the pushbacks. What do you say if you say me relying on God is, because whatever, I'm not properly educated, or I'm weak, and people who are weak will call upon God because they don't have the resources, because that's what they say in this world. I'm not naive, right? People who are poor and don't come from, a pedigree where the background is solid support-wise, they look to God. That's why they're in church all the time. All right, fair enough. That's a fair argument, because I agree to some extent. Church is filled with a lot of people who don't have economic resources or economic strength and power, so they look to God to help. So there's no, I won't disagree with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm smarter than that. I'm not going to argue that, because I know that there's some truth in that. But what I will ask you, though, is what about the person who has the resources, have all the economic support, come from that stock, that pedigree, that family of that dynasty, but yet they don't go to church, they don't run to God, but they run to sedatives? I'm going to stump the hell out of you with this question. What would you say to the person who has all the economic power, the political power, political persuasion, have all the things that this world can offer, but they got to go to a therapy? They have their therapist on speed dial, literally. They can't make a decision or function without going to their therapist at least once a week. Or they got to go to their doctor, and you go to their rich mansions. I promise you, you look in their medicine cabinet, and they got all kind of sedatives. They got all kind of pharmaceuticals to sleep, just to make a decision. They got to take drugs because their brain is hyperactive. They're suffering from hypertension, which is a form of stress. High blood pressure, cortisol levels are too high. So they're suffering from all kind of brain damage. This is medical stuff that's proven. My question would be, let me simmer it down and settle it in like this. If the poor man or the uneducated or undereducated man runs to God because he has no other source, or he doesn't have the proper education or whatever, why do the rich, educated man run to the therapist or run to the doctor to get a drug just so he could sleep at night? Or just so he's able to function on his job because he's suffering from panic attacks? I know people who are financially sound and suffer from panic attacks. They have to take sedatives or Adderall or whatever drug so they can stay calm, so that they don't lose their mind. My question is, how do you explain that? Make that make sense to me. Because I'm going to stand for the poor man who runs to God. I'm going to stand for the undereducated man who runs to church. I'm going to stand with those who are downtrodden, who are oppressed, who runs to God because they don't have the intellectual power or the articulation to be able to fight with words. I'm going to stand for those. And I'm going to be the voice of those and ask, how do you square? How do you resolve? How do you settle? How do you make it make sense that those who are hyper-educated, over-educated, sophisticated, but yet cannot go to sleep without a medicine, cannot leave their homes without taking pills, but yet they have everything, so to speak? I rest my case. You can't make it make sense. They cannot make it make sense. Because the truth is, God is real. And Jesus Christ is real. That's the truth. That's the truth. Because those with money are committing suicide at very high rates. A country singer, R.I.P., just killed himself last week, Friday. Multi-millionaire. Before that, another guy just offed himself back in December. Multi-millionaire. So the poor man running to church, I'd rather be that poor man running to church than the rich man putting a gun in my mouth and blowing my brains out because I can't deal with whatever I'm fighting and battling in this world. I'd rather run to church. Matter of fact, Proverbs says, the name of God is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and are saved. A lot of people who speak against God don't understand God. Let me tell you something before I go real quick. God, people don't understand, is not some outside force. God is not in the sky. God is not some white dude sitting up in the sky with a beard, judging you based off your wrongs and rights. God lives inside of me. There is no God outside of me. God lives inside of me. The very book in Acts chapter, I believe 12 or 28 says that God dwells in the temple, not built with hands. If you go to a doctor and ask the doctor, where's your temple? They'll point right here. Your temple is right here. It's called your temporal lobe. And the Bible says God lives in the temple, not built with hands. The only temple I know not built with hands is this. It's the organ in my brain, my cerebrum, my cerebellum. God is within me. He dwells in my organs, in my cerebral spinal fluid, CSF. God dwells in my CSF. God dwells in my solar plexus. Solar comes from the word sun. Within the solar plexus, there is something called the Bethlehem, house of bread, where Christ is born and raises up into the Abdullah oblongata, into my Abdullah oblongata, and from there secretes into my optic thalamus, and from there into my pituitary and my pineal gland, and from there it is differentiated into two chemicals. Those two chemicals are serotonin and melatonin. Upgraded creates DMT. Y'all can't speak to me. Peace.